I'm aware that Chassidus explains that the Sukkah houses a lofty spiritual level. I believe it is called Makifim Debina. Yes, you're right. And sleeping in that zone would be inappropriate. Why would Halachah, which is the divine will, prescribe such an activity? Okay, great question. And unfortunately, this question has been used by some people for own selfish purposes. The famous dollars where Rabbi Kahana from Yerushalayim came to the Rebbe and said that he wants the Rebbe to explain to him why Chabad doesn't sleep in a sukkah in Mana Shalom. Because there are people who have tinus. And he was referring to Panovich and other places where they had these complaints that Chabad is not sleeping in a sukkah. And the Rebbe, instead of answering the question, got very upset, visibly, and said the whole thing is based on machlekes. Because the fact is that the source of it comes from the Mittler Rebbe, who definitely saw it by his father, the Alter Rebbe. If they accept the Alter Rebbe as a pesach, as an authority, that doesn't matter whether we have an explanation or not, and that's all that matters. And the Rebbe refused, as much as he insisted of Kahana for an explanation, the Rebbe refused to give it, which was obviously why. Because the Rebbe saw the whole thing as machlekes. If it's based on machlekes, whatever explanation he'll give, there'll always be another question. So I think it's important to mention that, because some people ask questions, the content not with the intention of an answer, but rather just to complain. Just let's keep something very much in mind. How does Chabad behave regarding to a sukkah? The only community that will sit in a sukkah even when it rains, even when it's completely uncomfortable. So to say that suddenly with being makel and being lenient when it comes to sleeping, the same Rabbeim, they're not sleeping in a sukkah, were machmir not to drink a drop of water outside of a sukkah. Show me that type of stringency. So clearly, based on that, you understand that they're not sleeping has nothing to do with because they might want to be comfortable. It has to do with deeper reasons, even if you don't understand it. Now, the second point is that the Rebbe Taka did explain it in a classic Sikha in the night of the second day of Sukkot, and then Simchas Torah and Shabbos Bereshis, 3 Farbrengens. The Rebbe discussed it in Tovshin Lamed. Tovshin Lamed. We're now in Tovshin Ayin Zayin, so that would be 47 years ago. Tovshin Ayin Ches, 48 years ago. 48 years ago, the Rebbe explained it. The equivalent would have been 1969 because the English year didn't change yet. And that was later printed in Likutei Sichos, volume 29, page 211 and on. So everyone can go look it up. It's a Sikha, a Nigladika Sikha that explains, well, Nigladika. It's based, of course, on facts. We have to know the facts. The facts are that there was, the Friedman Rebbe says in the Sikha in Tofrei Sadik Tez, the first night of Sukkot, and similarly in the first night of Sukkot of Tovshin Hay, these are printed, talks about how the Mittler Rebbe heard that some people were sleeping in a sukkah and he called them in and gave it to them. So it's makifim. Another expression, sometimes the expression is, how could you sleep in makifim debina? He knew the Shulchan Aruch and he knew that there was no two opinions. Shulchan Aruch says, Teishru came to do that you should eat, drink, and sleep. And there's no second opinion. And the Alter Rebbe brings it too. And yet he said that. So first we know there's a Rebbe, a Pesach also. So he says that's enough, as I mentioned before. But the Rebbe went on to explain, how do you explain this enigma? How could it be, fine, Makif and the Bina, how could it be that the Inyan Pnimi, the Ruchnius of the Sukkah should actually prevent you from keeping the mitzvah? Because there is a mitzvah to sleep there. And the Rebbe goes a longer explanation. I'll just tell you a few key points, and you could go look it up yourself in the sources I just gave, and I'll give you a few more sources in a moment. The point first, the Rebbe starts explaining that the fact is that there's the concept, if a person is in that situation, how could you sleep makif in the bin, is mitzvah, is pain. Why? Because he senses this level of ruchnius, and he can't bring himself to sleep there. It causes him pain to stay there. And the hapi halach, if you're mitzvah, you don't have to be even sit in a sukkah, let alone sleep. But the Rebbe says still, but how could we be deprived? How could something like that? Why would Able to make him says a mitzvah to sleep in the sukkah, and then tell you the sukkah is makif from the bin, and then you can't bring yourself to sleep. So he goes first. He brings one consideration that the Ragachover says that shina b'sukkah is not really the same level mitzvah as eating in the sukkah. It's only that really that you're not allowed to sleep outside of a sukkah, but it's not that you have to sleep in the sukkah. So that's why you don't make a bracha on it and a few other details. So the bottom line is, if not sleeping in a sukkah, does not the ikar ha-mitzvah, but the Rebbe negates that, and then comes away with the bottom line saying that you see in the Gemara, famous Gemara, Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, it says, Lei Taub, they never slept. And when they did sleep, they would drowse off on each other's shoulders as they danced at night. And from the Gemara it's clear they didn't go into a sukkah to drowse off. So how could all these Tanoim, it says that they danced and they drowsed off, not in a sukkah. So the Rebbe explains that there's the concept that you could do the whole mitzvah of sukkahs even if they don't sleep in a sukkah. Now it's not a mocker direct. I mean, it's actually a mocker for actually not sleeping in a sukkah. If you see that fact that they danced, and it appears that it wasn't necessarily in a sukkah. So Takin Lekutei Sichos, volume 17, page 272, in a footnote, he says that perhaps that's a source for not sleeping. However, even if you don't have a source, we have the Mitla Rebbe. The question is that a contradiction to Halachah? So the first thing is because he said it, and the Alter Rebbe clearly and the other Rabbeim did not sleep in a sukkah, and there are other custom people or other custom not Chabad that also don't. That's enough. But the question is, how could be deprived of a mitzvah? So the Rebbe explains, the mitzvah is completed completely when you eat and drink and do everything you have to do in a sukkah. The not sleeping in it does not take away from the mitzvah. But then comes the big question, one second, the Mitla Rebbe felt makif in the bina. What about the rest of us? We're completely oblivious. So the Rebbe goes on to explain, because we heard from the Mitla Rebbe that's makif from the bina, and as the Rebbe says, it brings in that sikh, he says that once they heard that, there's mitzvah, there's pain, that they don't feel it. As the Rebbe brings in that sikh. That's one level of mitzvah. He brings another interesting point, he says, let me just read it inside. So the pain of not feeling it, or the pain that he doesn't feel that the pisgim, the word that the Mitla Rebbe said is affecting him. The Rebbe went on, Tov Shel Lamed, and said, what happens if you don't even have pain over that? So he says, then you have pain over not having pain over not having pain. And the Rebbe says, as many levels as you need. When you hear the story, you have pain over the fact that you don't feel it, that you don't feel as many levels as you need, until you finally say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable to sleep in a sukkah, that I don't feel, and have pain over the fact that I don't feel all these feelings. The bottom line is that there's a clear mocker from the Rabbeim, and there's an explanation how it's not a contradiction to the Halachah Shabbat of the Halachah, I should say, of not fulfilling, does not deprive us from the mitzvah of Sukkah. Now, in addition, there's a letter from the Rebbe in Igros Kodesh, volume 11, which goes back already to the year Tafshin Tezvav, 24th of El, where the Rebbe says briefly about Sukkah that it's that about sleeping in the Sukkah. Harbi Yesh Lahar, there's a lot to elaborate on this. In a footnote, he says from the Nekudis is one Shlilas Dover Boze B'Sukkah. Make sure not to do something embarrassing in a sukkah. And the tzich of Tafresh Sadik Test, the Friedman Rebbe speaks about that. That we don't, Adamud Le'elam, a person is always responsible even when they sleep. So if you're Baal Madrega, which is how he explains, by the way, the people before the Mitla Rebbe, that even Makif from the Bina, they also were able to deal with that. But in our generations, especially after Chabad Chassidim and later generations, you can end up doing something that's embarrassing or that's mavaza the sukkah. That's one thing. And the second thing is mitzvah. So the Rebbe hints to some of these ideas that we talked about. But I would definitely refer you to look up all these sikhs and understand it more comprehensively. The bottom line is that nothing is just some type of leniency, God forbid. The whole sikh is based on that the hiddur was mamish to not a drink of water. So definitely the sleeping has some deeper thing.